I think I got a decent concept for reviving my Tyranid army.
I'm gonna make some weird shit.
After several requests and much delay, I welcome you to this hobby breakdown video for the custom conversions I made for my Hive Fleet Gengar project. In this video I will go through the intent and approach for all of these models here. They are what I qualify as the standout key conversions of the army, and I figured it would make sense to go through them from smallest to largest. Starting with the power-overwhelming Neurothrope. The Neurothrope is the HQ character variant of a Zoanthrope. The key differences are an extended spinal column and a slightly wider head plate which has a spike. From the front view, I find the difference is too subtle. For me, this was insufficient, as I knew Gengar's theme would be leaning into the psychic qualities of the Nids, and I wanted the Neurothrope to be suitably unique. And so I began looking for conversion concepts, eventually stumbling upon this image on Pinterest, which served as the goal for Gengar's Neurothrope. All creative credit goes to Reddit user NoSlawExtraToast for this awesome concept of a floating Neurothrope brimming with psychic energy, a conversion which I adore, hence my imitation. As for how I went about going through with this conversion, I made extensive use of paper clips. Using pliers, I bent the wire into shapes I was satisfied with, and used superglue to fix them together. Now that doesn't leave much surface area for a strong bond on this complex shape, so those connection points were reinforced with sprue glue. This also served to add some variance to the thickness of the wires, which I find help evoke a more natural form. Then I added a few bits of cork and slate, and then the paint, and we're at the end result, which I feel really sells that floating psychically charged effect. You could say, it's super effective. Gengar's Hive Tyrant. I can't take too much credit for this one. I knew I wanted a beefier Hive Tyrant, as I find GW's model suffers from scale creep hurting its presence. After doing some research, I was made aware of the Lord of Spacebug's model sculpted by Butov, a model which definitely checks all the boxes I want for a Hive Tyrant. It's detailed, imposing, and the aesthetic is just killer. And the sculptor took the effort to make various options, including a custom bioweapon to serve as the Shard Gullet relic. Just look at it. Alright, enough gushing. So I bought the STL, got it printed, and magged it all up, so I can switch this guy up from a Shard Gullet style to the Hive Fleet Gengar Sword and Shield style, which showcases the subtle conversion on this unit. Given the theme I had in mind for Gengar, one of combating demons, I liked the idea that Gengar's unique Hive Tyrant would be a twist on the idea of a paladin, so I crafted a sword and shield. The shield was created from a Neurothrope and Trigon headplate, and the sword is one from Butov's Lord of Spacebugs kit. Both parts were then modified with a bit of green stuff. As for the base, I knew an elaborate leader beast model would benefit from an elaborate base, and so following in step with the bases of Guilliman and Abaddon, it made sense for Gengar to feature a dead demon on its base. Using spare bits from the old Demon Prince kit, a Bloodthirster head, a Talos hand, and some green stuff, I went about crafting this slain demon, with an optional sword and mouth. The floating Maleceptor. Most of the time, I quite like GW's models. In fact, I would say the model makers typically do a damn good job, but sometimes I feel the design department fumbles, and I find the Maleceptor is one of those cases. In short, I am all for the big gun beasts and melee monsters having a biped or quadruped style body, but I much prefer my brain bugs to be eldritch floating dread-evoking aliens. I dabbled with different alterations, but I eventually landed upon the current design. And I've actually already made a video detailing how this Maleceptor was constructed, using the Maleceptor kit and a Mucilid Spore, so if you want a walkthrough on the process, check out the link in the card. The Zerg Queen Tervigon. In the case of the Tervigon, I quite like GW's design. The only reason I deviated from it is because the Tervigon unit option serves as a good counts-as for the Zerg Queen design from Starcraft 2. I tried this conversion a few years ago, but I was unsatisfied with it, and the Gengar Army project seemed like an ideal opportunity to take another stab at it. And I think this result is much better. As for the workflow of the new conversion, the foundation is the same, using an Arachnarok as a base. However, this time around I added Tervigon parts. First, the Arachnarok abdomen was roughly cut so the Tervigon egg sac could fit. Then the egg sac and the birthing mouth were attached. Once those grafted parts dried, a Milliput green stuff mix was used to gap fill all the open spaces. You can also see the position of the legs were also adjusted, all with paperclip pins in several of the joints. Next I used some 3D printed parts for the upper body assembly. These were parts also from Butov, since I find them to be a better proportional fit for the Zerg Queen look compared to the previous iteration. I also added a spare Carnifex Stinger Salvo plate on either side of the birthing mouth. And the Zerg Queen style reverse talons are a combination of Tyrant scything talons and Arachnarok leg parts. Then using green stuff, the real sculpting began, with the goal to blend all of these different parts together. This piece involved quite a bit of green stuff sculpting to blend the parts. Honestly, I wasn't all that confident during the sculpting process, as this felt like a rather steep incline to my skill level. But after the paint was applied, I feel like I did a
damn good, bloody good, damn good job.
And finally we arrive at the Gear REX Tyrannofex. While I quite like the look of GW's Tervigon, I kind of hate the Tyrannofex. Not only does it have big time Jacko energy, but its main gun is mounted so low to the ground, and I can't help but feel its legs are too thin to support the mass it's carrying, let alone the recoil of the mightiest biocannon in the Tyranid's codex. In essence, all the elements I like about the Exocrine gun platform are inverted on the Tyrannofex, and so I began to look for conversion routes. But I didn't really find anything I liked to serve as a guide or goal. It was then I decided that maybe I could model a custom Tyrannofex after Metal Gear Rex. You see, I'm a big fan of the Metal Gear series.
Did you like my sunglasses?
And so naturally I felt Rex would make for a great design template for an upright walking battle tank. To me, the Rupture Cannon looks suitable as an organic railgun, and with the Exocrine giving off Shagohod vibes, I felt even better about making a Metal Gear Rex style Tyrannofex. Plus the concept for an organic Metal Gear Rex was executed pretty well in Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, so as a concept, it didn't feel too far out of the box. And so with my conversion confidence bolstered from the Tervigon project, development of Tyranno Rex began. It started with using sculpting wire as an armature for the modified legs. With the armature sized and laid out, it was covered with a Milliput green stuff mix. At this stage I also deemed I could use various components from the original kit, so I broke and positioned several parts where I thought they could best be used. The Milliput green stuff mix dries rock hard, which ensures the bones of the leg can support the weight of the pose. However, at this stage it's way too thin, so step 2 was to add some bulk. I wanted to add mass to the legs in a way I figured the musculature would function, so I used the legs of a Carnifex as reference. I then added the strips, which would serve as a primary muscle bundle. Once that dried, I began working on top of it to continue shaping the leg. At this stage, I replaced the top torso with the same 3D printed torso I used for the Tervigon, and I made use of the Tyrannofex Flesh Borer Hive arms to serve as the Metal Gear Rex weapon mounts. From there began the finer work, consisting of adding more green stuff, shaping it and blending it to the surrounding areas. This conversion was a massive undertaking. Truth be told, I started it fairly early in the Army's timeline. But once I realized the skill floor it required, I shelved it for a few months in order to gain some green stuff confidence. And boy am I glad I did, because this conversion needed it. And after splashing some paint on it, that pretty much brings us here. This was by far the most robust conversion project I've done, one which I'm very pleased with. It's got a Tyranid style radome. It's got talons on its feet to serve as those stability anchors. And following that trend, it's got arms and legs which I feel have a better capacity for bearing the recoil of the Rupture Cannon compared to the original kit. It's also megged, so it can swap the Rupture Cannon out for the Acid Spray. And lastly, it has a form which feels more like it's an evolution of the Carnifex strain rather than a weapon beast spun out of the Tervigon. which is a distinction I much prefer. Well, that's a wrap on this conversion breakdown. Unfortunately, I didn't capture video footage of the process, as the process of creating these was very much an exploratory exercise. I was essentially figuring it out as I went along. Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to my patrons, Julius Maximus, as well as the others who help keep the dream alive. Anyways, there are buttons for liking, sharing, and subscribing, so press the buttons you want to press, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Snake! Did you like my sunglasses?